Welcome to Shimano's in-depth video on hollow ace connections. Today we're going to be teaming up with Shimano Pro staffers Justin Poe and Ted Sakai to bring you the most comprehensive, detailed, and easy to understand video on how to work with hollow ace and Power Pro lines, including how to make hollow ace to hollow ace connections, how to whip a loop, and how to make your own wind-on leaders. So let's join Justin and Ted and take the mystery out of hollow ace connections. Proudly brought to you by Shimano, makers of the finest fishing tackle in the world. Fish with the best. Fish Shimano. And by Power Pro. Experience the Power Pro advantage. Power Pro. Proven power.
Included in your splicing kit, we've also included, it's actually done by Daho, the actual needle size gauge will really depend on which needle you use to go into hollow ace, as well as on the following page, or actually the third page, it'll actually tell you which size recommended mono or fluorocarbon is best to go inside what size hollow ace. You know, it's very difficult to get a 150-pound fluorocarbon inside 60. Actually, it pretty much won't work. So you got to stay there pretty close. But we give recommended line sizes for which mono and fluoro to put into what size hollow ace. Depending on the size fluorocarbon you're going to use, which we're going to use 60-pound, and we're going to go into hollow ace 60-pound. So 60 into 60 is one of the hardest things to do, but we'll show you how easy it is to do with hollow ace. You want to trim your fluorocarbon to start with on an angle. That won't give it that big blunt edge, and it'll make it a little easier to go into the needle. You insert the fluorocarbon into the back of the needle, and it should be a tight fit. It shouldn't just slide right in real easy. It actually benefits you if it's hard to get in there, because it's a little harder to pull out. And when you go to insert the needle into the hollow ace, this is important because it'll pull that fluorocarbon out. So you start by basically bumping the end of the hollow ace with the tip of your finger just to kind of fray it. Makes it a little easier to get into the hollow ace. It takes a little feeling around, but once you get it started, it's pretty easy to get going. And then from there, you just apply pressure and slide it up the needle, and then you back. If you go through the side, you just backtrack a little bit. But you want to insert the fluorocarbon about 4 feet into the hollow ace. Now that just gives you a little bit more margin for slippage or slack or stretch or things like that monofilament and fluorocarbon lines typically have associated with them, you know, and you want to get that needle up in there.
So the hollow core is going over the end of the needle.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah, the hollow core is going right over the end of the needle and basically working itself up. He's basically working the needle into the hollow ace and pulling the fluorocarbon along with it.
Okay. So
So it's all one. It's all moving as one. The fluorocarbon is acting as an extension of the needle.
got it.
That's what I was trying to say with the needle being, you know, with the fluorocarbon being tight into the needle. If it's not, that fluorocarbon will be pulled right out of the back of the needle, and then, you know, somewhere 2 feet behind you, you'd have your fluorocarbon hanging out and not being able to get it up there any farther where you need to have it. So after he works this in about 4 feet, he's basically going to repeat the process of the same that he did with the other splices he's done already. So from here, he just kind of keeps massaging it, keep working it up into the hollow ace. And it's going to be a tight fit, but you know that's what you want. You want it to be a tight fit. If it's too loose, you're going to have big problems. It's going to basically pull out on a fish or under pressure or things like that, because you know the finger cuff is the strongest connection possible. You know, there's a lot of things out there, crimps and swedges and things like that work, but you know, nothing is as strong and as the path of least resistance, you know, for going through the guides and things like that as this connection here, which is the splice fluoro into hollow ace. He's come out the side with the needle there, and he's continuing to pull that through, and as you can see, the fluorocarbon comes right with it out the side there. Now from here, you can start pulling down the hollow ace and tightening that and securing that onto the fluorocarbon and keeping it tight.
So he's basically massaging the hollow core, or the hollow ace, down the full length of the 4 feet.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's kind of crimped up, sort of like an accordion.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now he's
pulled it tight to where the fluorocarbon is actually locked inside that hollow ace, and you can see that transition there. You know, from blue to clear, it's pretty apparent how nice that transition is. But From here, if there was ever any kind of slack, which Ted will show you by pulling up on the holloways, it's pretty easy to pull that out. But if under, constant tension and some way to lock it, which he'll show you next, it's a great connection. Now that Ted has the fluorocarbon inserted inside the holloways, we're going to show you how to finish the knot. Daho has a prototype that they've lent us to basically tighten up and show, but you don't really have to have these tools. There's many tools like this available on the market. You don't have to have these tools, but for ease of filming and keeping our hands more stationary, it's a little bit easier to show you this way, so we'll show you. Now basically what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take the holloway side and basically put it around the clamp. Then you're going to want to tighten that down. It's Delrin, so it's really not going to harm it in any way. It's very smooth. You don't want to do this with a sharp surface or anything like that that's going to damage anything. Take the other side, the fluorocarbon, wrap it around, and pull it tight, and then clamp it back down. And this is going to give you something really easy to work with right in front of you, raised off the ground. It makes it really easy. If you have access to one of these tools, or if you can build something like this, it'll make your life a lot simpler. But it's not really something you can use on the boat unless you got a lot of time in a big galley or something like that. But it'll have your connection right there out in front of you. Now the power floss that's included in your kit is what you're going to be using to finish these connections. Now, first thing you want to do is insert the power floss up into the bottom of the bobbin and push it up through the top. Now from here, Ted's going to grab the line at the top of the bobbin tool and pull it up through. And from there, he's going to wrap the power floss around one of the legs of the bobbin tool, and this will just apply pressure later. So when we are aligning the power floss onto the joint, it'll apply enough pressure. Now from here, he basically just spreads the bottom of the bobbin tool and inserts the power floss spool onto the knuckles of the bobbin tool and just kind of aligns it on the holes that are on the power floss spool.
Perfect.
And basically, you want it wrapped around that leg 3 times, and you make sure the tension's good and all that stuff. Ted's winding a little bit back on because he got a little bit too much excess there. But from here, you start with getting it set up to where you have the wire loop needle. And the wire loop needle is a little bit different than the latch needle, although it's used in similar ways. The wire loop needle is going to allow Ted to tie the nail knot very, very easily, which is what you start this connection with. You basically lay the loop needle parallel to the entire connection and wrap it over the entire connection with the tag end of the power floss. So you're pulling it over the loop needle, over the holloways, the fluorocarbons inside the holloways, and pulling it over the power floss itself. You do that about 5 or 6 times, then you put the power floss into the loop needle, and then you pull that through the whole thing, and that is your nail knot. And from here you pull the tag and the standing end equally, and basically pull it down. You kind of have to massage it to get it to lay right. You can basically pull it and pull it tight. You don't want to pull it so tight at this point because you still want to be able to slide it. And you're going to slide that nail knot down to where it's about 1.5 inches, 2 inches from the joint. And from here, you basically snug it up to where it's not going to move on you anymore. Be careful not to pull too tight because, power floss and light Dacron breaks pretty easy, and if you break it here, you got to start all over. So now Ted's winding down tight to the connection, and from here, he's going to start wrapping the bobbin over the holloways and the fluorocarbon all the way down to pretty much the connection there. You can actually go a little faster and hold a little tension and basically get it to wrap on its own. This makes it really easy because the tension holds it perfect, and it basically follows itself on its own trajectory right next to one another. And sometimes you lose it, but then you just keep it going. You basically go all the way to right at the end of the transition to where the holloway stops and the fluorocarbon starts. If you wind too far, don't worry, just wind it back a couple times. But then you have to go back the opposite direction. The first few you kind of got to do by hand just to get it going the other direction. If not, it'll want to continue back down. From here you tighten back up, and you can basically start doing it the same way you did it on the way down by just swinging it around. It takes a little getting used to, but then you kind of get it going all the way back down. You basically go back down over itself all the way until you're back over top of your nail knot. It's a very clean, precise connection. A little more there. Basically a couple more. Good to go.
Okay.
And then you want to pull, 10, 12 inches off for a tag end. And then you want to do a half hitch. And you cinch it up right there, and that basically locks it in place. And from here you trim off, 10 inches of tag end. You want to end this knot with a series of 6 half hitches. You want to alter them. You want to go, 3 to the right, 3 to the left, but you don't want to do it in that succession. You want to go right, left, right, left. From here, you change to grab the tag end from the nail knot, and then you finish by doing 6 more that are alternating over there. So the total amount of finished knots would be 12.
Perfect.
It just secures it, keeps it from slipping. So from here, you grab both of the tag ends and you tie a 3-way lock knot back onto the finished knots. And that locks the whole thing right there.
Sweet.
So as you can see, that connection is very, very, very small, very, very compact connection. From here, Ted will trim the tag ends very, very close, and then apply a very small amount of Zap-A-Gap glue to the entire connection. And again, like I mentioned before, the power floss is, it's permeable. It does absorb this Zap-A-Gap glue, which is important because regular spectra fiber does not absorb glue. So this gets it in there to where it really, not only is it physically tied together, it is chemically tied together at this point. You just kind of smooth it out and make sure it fills in all the gaps, and let it dry, and you are good to go.
Fish with the best, Power Pro and Hollow Ace, the finest braided microfilament lines in the world.